Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Well, welcome to Moving Forward. Tonight, it's my honor to present Dr. Rebecca Jefferson. She is a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin and is becoming a librarian. So I couldn't think of anyone better to be sharing with you how to find accurate information, okay, especially on the internet. So I will let her do her thing. Does everyone have a handout? I will get you guys here. All right, take it away.
Okay. Now, first of all, can folks hear me? I don't know that I trust this microphone. All right. So the first thing I want is to ask a question and have a show of hands. How many people in this room would consider themselves to be computer literate? Raise a hand. A little less than half, computer literate. Okay, how about savvy? Trust yourself a little more with that. Okay, fewer. Okay. So people mean different things by those terms, but at this point, we are naive in medicine to think that most of the folks that we see are not looking things up on the internet. The internet is not as much of a Wild West as it used to be, but it is kind of still the Wild West. And my goal in this talk is to show you what I mean by that and to help you navigate the internet in a way that will get you the most useful information. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this. This is Google. This is one of the more famous search engines. And just to demonstrate, I'm going to type in Parkinson's disease. So let's see. And you know it has this lovely thing where it likes to finish my typing for me. So it'll type that in. Now, can folks read this fairly well? You notice what's going on here, where it says in these tiny little letters, ad. So what a lot of folks don't realize about search engines like Google is that the order in which you find the results on these websites, it's not random. It's controlled by an algorithm, which is basically a program that sorts things. That's a very basic definition, but that's what it is. Google's algorithm, the way that its program sorts things, is proprietary. It's a trade secret, so they won't let anyone know exactly what it is. But we do know that companies and organizations can pay Google to have their results appear higher up, and that's what's going on here. Now, legally, Google has to tell you if something is an ad or if it's paid to be higher up, and that's why it's listed like this. But it's pretty darn small print, easy not to notice. The thing I want to keep in mind here is that the fact that it's an ad or that it's a paid listing doesn't necessarily mean that the information being presented is bad. It's just important to keep in mind that just because it's first doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best information. Now, if you scroll down just a little bit, Mayo Clinic's pretty good. They usually pay to have their results up pretty high. But this right here, the National Institute on Aging by the NIH, which is the National Institutes of Health, this is a federal resource. And this is almost halfway down the page. Is it because it's bad information? No, it's because the federal government doesn't pay Google. So this result won't get listed quite as high. This is one of the most important things to realize when you're searching for stuff on the internet. And that's why when I have these little handouts, there's a guide on the back that summarizes the Medline Guide to Healthy Web Surfing. And one of the things that's on this list, on number 6, where it says, beware of bias, what is the purpose, who is providing the funding? Funding, following the money, is really important to understand. That's why I wanted to show you guys this. So it's not bad to use Google. It doesn't mean that it's bad information. But it's important to keep in mind that the first things you see are things that are paid. So I'm going to get into this a little bit more. So let's say we go over here to the Parkinsons Disease Center on WebMD. People have heard of WebMD, I'm betting, most likely. Lots of people know about it. You open it up. Here we are. It takes a while to load. Why does it take a while to load? Because, oh, it's going to jump away from me. Thank you. Okay. Oh, look, fun, pop-ups. That's great. What do you notice over here on the side of the page? Ads, yes, ads, everywhere ads. And what are they ads for? They're ads for Parkinson's disease drugs. Why are they on there? Who do you think pays for the content on WebMD? WebMD gets a lot of its funding from drug companies. Does that mean the information on there is bad? No. But it is important to keep in mind because you're going to see lots and lots of ads for drugs and you're going to find lots of information about drugs. And if you scroll down into the Parkinson's Health Center, into the treatment section, you'll find that they tend to mention the brand names of drugs. Oh, and they love to do this too, where they redirect me to new pages that are fun. You'll notice the top of this list says consider the source, use recognized authorities and know who's responsible. One of the things you're going to find out as you're digging on the internet is that finding out who is the source of the information is harder than you might think. Because WebMD, someone has to write those articles, right? But here, do you see an author's name anywhere? I sure as heck don't. No, there's no author's name anywhere. So how do you know who wrote it? Well, you can come on down here to the bottom, and here at the bottom of WebMD, they have things like the editorial policy, the advertising policy, where they have to, this is where they legally have to tell you about how they get their money, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to find it, and when you do click into it, I'm not going to bore you with it because it's usually very long and you have to dig through it. This actually is a center from which you can click on other articles about Parkinson's disease. So let's say, oh, I click on this one, gene therapy. This one has an author. That author isn't a doctor. That author is listed as a Health Day reporter. I'm not really sure what that means. She is a journalist, presumably, for something like Health Day. And this is dated 2018. Oh, I should be using the laser pointer. That would be smart of me to use the laser pointer to point at you. Look at this. We've been on this website for 30 seconds and pop-ups. So, again, it can be kind of difficult on some of these commercial websites to actually see who is authoring it, how frequently it's updated, and whether this has been reviewed by a medical professional, right? This is not necessarily easy information to find. And WebMD is used all the time. But that's why I'm here talking to you. So, what do we want to use instead? Well, it's good to use a resource that has been evaluated by a healthcare professional, that has very clear where the source of the money comes from, and that has regular updates. So on here, where am I right now? I should show you. This is the Ebling Library website. Now, some of you may have heard of Ebling Library or been by and seen it. I hope a few of you at least have, maybe a couple of you. All right, cool. Ebling Library is the UW's Health Sciences Library. We are located inside the Health Sciences Learning Center. We're attached to the medical school. But you do not have to be a medical student or a doctor to use Ebling Library. We are open to the public. And anyone can come in. We have public access computers and do a search, and anyone can come in and talk to one of our librarians during our business hours as well. This is our website, ebling.library.wisc.edu. It's lovely. Now, what I'm showing you, we have a feature, if you scroll down, and it's quite a ways down, where it says subject guides. Now, you might wonder, what the heck are these? Subject guides are lists of links and resources, both online and paper, that have been compiled painstakingly by our librarians to help people, the public, researchers, students, etc. And you'll see there's one right there that says consumer health. Or what does consumer health mean? Consumer health means it's designed for the general public. So down there on your list of things, I forget which number it is now because I'm not looking at it, it's consider the audience, right? Who is the site designed for? The consumer health listings are all things that are designed for the general public, which means that they don't contain a lot of medical jargon, a lot of terms. They're mostly in pretty good language. Now, when you click on this thing, it takes you to this. This is where I am. The very first page that you open, is the health info. And you can see who, the librarian who made it, Rhonda. Yay, Rhonda. At the top are the librarian's favorite consumer health websites. Right there, really easy to find, and you can see what all of these are. Now these guys do different things. I'm going to take you through a couple of them and show you what it's like to search on them. And you can see, and just, so you can see point by point how different they're going to be from searching WebMD. So, one that we really like a lot, and which you'll see a direct URL to and a little guide to on my back table there. I brought a bunch of information on Medline Plus because we love Medline Plus. We love Medline Plus because Medline Plus was created by the National Institutes of Health, U.S. National Library of Medicine. It's entirely publicly funded. It's very transparent where all the money is coming from. All of their content is vetted by healthcare professionals. It's easy to navigate and it's pretty well maintained. So, here in Medline Plus, they have a lot of health topics. They have a specific section for drugs, and they have a search function. So let's say we're going to try our same search again, Parkinson's disease. Here we go. Now, it has one really simple summary at the top of the disease, which I like, and a link to read more. And it shows a bunch of search results for different topics that are related. It also has an option here at the side. Now you can see it has also searched its separate list of drugs and supplements for Parkinson's disease already for you. So, if you went over here and clicked in here, it's going to show you drugs that are commonly used for Parkinson's disease. It's just going to automatically pull that up for you, which is really handy. If you needed it in another language, it will find that for you right here. Let's say you want it in Arabic. Let's say you want it in Spanish, I don't know. They also have a medical encyclopedia. So let's say you wanted to know the definition of some of these terms that you have heard. It will search these for you and lead you to articles about that. It's quite clear. Now, if you want to know who funds it, that's also quite easy to find. What is Medline Plus? How often is Medline Plus updated? Is the material on Medline Plus copyrighted, etc. So it's all here. It's fairly easy to look at. This is part of the reason librarians like it so much. Also because it's maintained by librarians and we are biased. Never believe anyone who tells you that they don't have an agenda. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone who is pushing any piece of information has an agenda. It's just important that their agenda aligns with yours. And the librarian's agenda is to provide information. So, not a bad agenda if you're going for one. This is just one example. Sometimes people who want to get a little more detail or something that's maybe a little bit out of the common way will want to search for, let's say, you're curious about herbal treatments. I get this question a lot. It doesn't necessarily pay to search the internet for an herb, like, oh, let me think of one that I hear about a lot. Yohimbine. Let's do that one. Anybody ever heard of this stuff, Yohimbine? No, I got one hand. I was going to say it's probably going to be a male hand that goes up because this yohimbine is often marketed as a prostate health supplement. It's an herb that's marketed for prostate health. So this is Microsoft Bing search, which is not as good as Google, but as you can see, look what comes up. Dr. Oz's blue pill, male enhancement, yohimbine to purchase at Amazon. This is not particularly useful, right? Let's say I want to know if yohimbine is safe or if it works. There is a wonderful resource, Memorial Sloan Kettering's About Herbs database. This was originally designed as a comprehensive database for cancer patients, but this is free, this is accessible to anyone, and it's easily searchable. Check it out. There's a video here, an introductory video at the top. And search. Ta-da! yohimbine. And right here it has a summary, purported uses, maybe weight loss. How does it work? What drugs does it interact with? More details. Of course, it has a disclaimer, which it's good that it has. It's not intended to replace advice from a doctor. Yay. But look, how it works, all the uses. You know who the source of the information is because it's Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. They're the ones who created this. It says specifically who it's directed at. So if your doctor has never heard of yohimbine and you would like your doctor to know more about yohimbine, you can direct a doctor here. Because it also has a list of references if you're interested in studies. See, there she is, yohimbine in the treatment of erectile disorder. And, again, it's fairly easy to find who is sponsoring this website and why. Does all this make sense? Am I making sense so far? Okay. Important things to keep in mind that I haven't touched on yet. So, focusing on quality. Not all sites are created equal. Now, WebMD, as it happens, does have an editorial board. And if you dig around there long enough, you can find information on the editorial board. Now, just so that you know, I am a medical doctor and a librarian in training. It took me almost 10 minutes to find where WebMD lists their editorial board. It's not easy, but it's there, it does exist. In a lot of these websites, it's a little easier to find. Is the information reviewed? Usually if it is reviewed, it will show that it's reviewed. So here's a nice example that I like. This will just take me a minute, because if this is a Microsoft computer, it doesn't like to go to Google automatically. So this is the Parkinsons Foundation. The Parkinsons Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means in English that nobody is paid to create this content. You'll notice if we keep scrolling down, there aren't any ads on this site. But it operates based on donations. So a lot of what it's trying to do, which you can't see because Microsoft is covering it, is get people to enroll in clinical trials and get people to make donations. That's what their agenda is. Not necessarily bad, but important to keep in mind. Now, every article here on the Parkinsons Foundation website lists who reviewed it right at the bottom. Dr. Bhavana Patel, Movement Disorders Fellow. This is a really nice example. It should ideally list who reviewed it at the bottom, and ideally it should also say when. My big quibble with the Parkinsons Disease Foundation is that there are no dates on any of these articles. There's no really easy way of telling how old this information is. They claim, if you go through and review their mission statement, that they update their site regularly, but what does regularly mean? I don't know. It could mean every 1 year. It could mean every 5. But it is reviewed by a medical doctor. So I like that. That's what we're getting at. Being a cyber skeptic, quackery abounds on the web. You guys saw that when we Googled yohimbine, and the first thing that came up was Dr. Oz's magic pill. Look for evidence, rely on research. Does it identify the author? Now, I haven't shown you any pages yet that rely on testimonials, mainly because you have to dig a little farther on the web to find those. Fortunately, that didn't used to be true. When you're Googling medical marijuana or other alternative therapies like acupuncture, etc., those sorts of things, you typically will find more sites where most of what is listed are personal testimonials. I don't have anything against personal testimonials, but personal testimonials aren't the same as research. So if you're reading on a site and primarily what's there is the story of how this was so good for one particular person or 1 or 2 people, you better be sure that that site also lists maybe a link to a couple of studies. Now, as you see, the Parkinsons Foundation, when it's talking about medical marijuana, it has this nice graph, but a graph is not a scientific study. It does have links to several major studies. Now, what happens if you click on this? Hello, come on. Do what I want you to do. Thank you. It takes you over here to PubMed. What is PubMed? PubMed is a resource for looking for research studies, medical publishing, basically. We have access through eBling and through BadgerLink. You have access to PubMed. I will talk about BadgerLink in just a second. But I don't recommend PubMed to start with unless you yourself have medical training or there's someone with medical training in your family, because PubMed is exclusively research studies, which means that a lot of the stuff is very difficult to use and very difficult to interpret. And I say difficult, I mean difficult even for medical professionals, even for us. We have to sit and read these research studies and decide like how much weight do we give this data, etc. So it isn't necessarily the most useful thing to sit and read, but it is useful in the sense that if something claims that there's a study and you type the purported title of said study into PubMed and it doesn't seem to exist, it might be a good clue that it's not a real study. Or it takes you to a journal that looks like it's, published somewhere in Brazil and only has a readership of maybe 60. That's not very valid. This study was published in Movement Disorders, which is a nice peer-reviewed journal. I wouldn't expect anyone to know what a peer-reviewed journal is. That's why you have me. You ask a librarian. A peer-reviewed journal means it's a good journal. This is a good study. So, check for currency. We already talked about that. What's the latest information? Beware of bias. I talked about that. Oh, protect your privacy. It is a lot harder to run across this than it used to be. Ooh, this is not very steady. But occasionally on the web, especially if something is being marketed, you will be asked to enter things like your age, your race, your diagnosis, etc. Please be aware that unless there is a very long page of someone explicitly asking for your permission to be a subject in a research study, anything that makes you enter personal data in order to read the information is a scam. You'll notice that nothing that I clicked on from the library's website, none of those resources wanted me to enter anything aside from search terms. Even the ones in the Parkinsons Foundation that were talking about enrollment in clinical trials. Actually, let's go back there. Let me show you this. I always think it's better to show than to tell. So let's say we click on the clinical trials page here. Let's say we're interested in clinical trials. What are clinical trials? Here we go. Why should I participate in a clinical study? Notice what is not happening here. Nowhere in this clinical trials information is the Parkinsons Foundation asking you to enter any personal data. Nope. If you want to learn more about clinical trials, where do? They send you to links. Links sponsored by the government, clinicaltrials.gov, NIH clinical trials, and more information. At no point is it asking you to enter anything, even something as seemingly impersonal as an email address. A legitimate website will not ask for that information. Make sense? All right. And point number 8, consult with your health professional. So that's what that big disclaimer is on Memorial Sloan Kettering's site. None of this is intended as a substitute for medical advice. It's really important to remember that the information that you find on the internet about medical conditions is designed to be general. So not all of it might apply to your specific condition. Your specific condition might have multiple other things going on. You might not see a medicine that you take listed as one of the common medicines. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad choice. It just might mean that there's something else going on, more complicated, etc. Again, it's not intended to substitute, but it is intended to inform. So I'm going to go through a couple more things, and then I'm going to be willing to bet that you guys are probably going to be really tired of listening to me. So we can take a few questions. But I wanted to draw your attention to a few things. Everything that I've clicked on so far is a publicly available resource. There are a few things that are not publicly available that are restricted. If you go into eBling, you are inside of UW's network and you can access anything that UW subscribes to. So you can access lots and lots of different Alt Health Watch, LexiPal's Drug Guide, etc., etc. When you're in your computer at home, if you tried to access those, it would come up blocked. It would say this is a restricted access source. However, there exists a wonderful thing called BadgerLink. Now, if you are a resident of Wisconsin and you have a library card for any local library, which I hope you do because public libraries are a wonderful thing, totally biased, BadgerLink is available and accessible to you. BadgerLink is a program from the state government where the state has paid to allow free access to a number of resources that are usually restricted for anyone who's a resident of the state and has a library card. Now, what kinds of resources am I talking about? Well, AFHS consumer medication information. This is the American Health Pharmacists Association drug information listings. So it has drug information about any type of drug that you could possibly be taking in language that's designed to be easy for you to read. It lists very much like the package insert, only easier to read, bigger, and less easy to rip. This is broadly searchable. Now, if I click on it now, it will say to me, no, you can't access it. But, oh no, it does. It says it, probably because of what this wireless is. But you can search anything that you want. It will, when you're at home, it'll pop up and ask you to enter your library card number. And your PIN usually. Library cards will usually have like a 4-digit PIN. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Also, Alt Health Watch. Alt Health Watch is sort of like Memorial Sloan Kettering's herbs database, except for alternative treatments. So it has information about things like acupuncture, massage, cupping, etc., those sorts of things. Encyclopedia Britannica, Consumer Health Complete, EBSCO Health. Now, EBSCO is a very large information sort of superstore powerhouse place. They index lots of different websites, articles, sources of information, etc. So you can search EBSCO for all kinds of different conditions, drug names, etc. All of this is available to you with a library card. So if you haven't got one, I highly recommend getting one, because you can use these resources, Health Source, etc. Now take me back. You'll see on our, here. There used to be a really wonderful Medline medical dictionary. Unfortunately, I don't know if a lot of you have heard about this. In 2016, the Trump administration cut funding to a number of different public websites that were maintained by the government. There were several different things that died when that happened. One of them, unfortunately, was Medline's Medical Dictionary. I used to always show everybody Medline's Medical Dictionary, but that website, alas, is no more. However, MedicineNet.com and the Merck Manual still maintain pretty decent, though less thorough, medical dictionaries for defining words that your doctor might use. You know, things like refractory symptoms, or what in the world does that mean? You can look it up in one of these. On some of these other tabs, and I wanted to draw your attention to, you'll see this heading for Wisconsin residents only or Wisconsin-specific information. Here, that typically means that that is a BadgerLink resource. So you see it's the AFHS one that's kind of separated out underneath that tab. That's a BadgerLink resource. Everything else you can access without a library card, but for that one, you need to be a Wisconsin resident and have a library card. And for some of the other ones, it's also because it's specific to Wisconsin. Lots of different things on here. All right, so I went through the main principles with you and went through the website with you. We did a little bit of demonstration of how this goes. There isn't really much more to it than that, but I want to make sure I'm being clear, and typically the only way to know that is to see if you all have questions, so please ask me questions. Yes, sir. Sure, but the Mayo Clinic website, he's asking for comment about the Mayo Clinic website, is it good or bad? It isn't good or bad. In general, the Mayo Clinic's website is very reliable. It wasn't one of the ones I showed. It just so happens that the Mayo Clinic has a lot of money. Because they have a lot of money, they tend to pay to have their results listed quite highly in Google. However, the Mayo Clinic's health guides are usually quite good. Most of them are updated at least every other year, and they're typically reviewed by medical professionals. So the Mayo Clinic has pretty good quality information. I just cited it as an example of how a healthcare organization that has a little bit more resources can have their results moved up higher. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's pretty good information. But the reason it's always one of the top 2 hits is not because it's the best information. Clear? More questions, please. Yes. Yeah. Well, so the short answer to that is you might not be able to do that without paying a visit to the library. Yes. So not necessarily all of them. I don't want to guarantee you that. But because we are a world-class medical library, we maintain subscriptions to almost every single major journal. If it's not readily available online, I can guarantee you that a librarian can find it. Yep. More questions?
Did everyone hear that question? Just making sure. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So we welcome you to come to Ebling Library. The library is staffed from 9 to 4:30. It often pays, so actually, thank you for bringing this up because I forgot about something else I wanted to show you. At Ebling Library's main site, at the top, you will see in large bolded letters the word Ask. This takes you to the Ask a Librarian option, phone, and email. So, if you want to ask a reference question or a general question, you want a librarian's help, you can send an email, and this goes to a general Ask Ebling email address. This is checked sometimes by me, the reference student, and sometimes by the librarians. We can route your question to the appropriate librarian. We can contact you and make an appointment to talk to you in person. So you can even make an appointment and meet with a librarian to sit down and sort through your questions. Or you can come in and see who's around. You can call at any time that we're open. So absolutely. Also, your local public library can be a pretty good resource for BadgerLink related resources. Most of the librarians there are trained to use BadgerLink. For stuff that's a little more specialized, like what this lovely woman was asking about before, about specific articles, you probably need to come to us because most local libraries won't have access to those things. Yeah? All right. More questions? Yes? So articles that are simple to understand was the question. Mayo Clinic does do a pretty good job of that. The other website is one that you'll see, so you'll see on the back, there's another handout that I have that says on it, finally a website for grown-ups. That is the NIH's Senior Health Resource. The NIH's Senior Health website is specifically designed to present information in a brief, simple format. So the NIH's Senior Health website is a good one. Medline is also pretty good for that as well. More questions? is just blossoming with marijuana search results. Yep. Yeah. Well, that is actually quite a complex question because you're actually asking me a cybersecurity question. You know? So what he's asking is, can it be avoided that Google or indexing software will capture what you're searching for and then, you know, spit it back to you in the form of ads or sponsored search results? The short answer is not completely, but it is less likely. It's less likely because resources that are sponsored by government entities tend not to have ads. So resources that are sponsored by nonprofit corporations and by government entities tend not to have advertisements on them. And a lot of the tracking is done through the ads. However, there is a more complicated, the why it's not a flat no is a more complicated, and it's a more of a cybersecurity thing, which I am not fully an expert in just yet. Other questions? Right. Anybody have any burning questions about data and health information that you'd like to ask? Yes?
I have gone on Pinterest sometimes to look for recipes or something. I don't do it that much. But one day I had it on or something, and I looked at it once it said, I didn't even.
I know. I know.
First of all, I thought, why does Pinterest have Parkinson's information?
Mm-hmm.
And then how did it know to tell me that?
Yeah. No. I think a lot of people have probably had this experience. And so, I mean, I can't answer exactly how it knew, because how it knew, you better believe, is a closely guarded trade secret within the internet advertising community. It's all to do with algorithms and trolling for search patterns. But I want to thank you for bringing up the issue of social media. So if you notice, what did I definitely not show you at any point during this talk? Facebook. I did not show you Facebook at any point during this talk because Facebook is not a reliable source of health information. I feel silly that I need to say this, but people trust their friends and family. Now, your friends and family are wonderful. I will not malign them. However, your friends and family may or may not be healthcare professionals and may or may not be librarians. Maybe they are, I don't know. But I know that I am a healthcare professional, and I have occasionally posted things to Facebook that don't really have a reliable source. I've said things like, well, look at this interesting thing. That doesn't necessarily make it healthcare information, even if a healthcare provider posted it to Facebook. So, social media, there's information on there. There'll be testimonials on there. There'll be things that people use on there. There'll be ads on there. What there isn't really on there is information that meets our lovely 8 criteria, which are very good to go by. Basic, but good to stick to. I'm glad someone brought that up, actually. Questions? Yeah. Well, it is true that targeted advertising software has gotten very sophisticated. That's kind of beyond my scope, but it has gotten quite sophisticated. Do people feel safe searching for things online? Do you guys tend to feel safe searching for things online? No, it's very difficult. Again, avoiding advertisements helps, but this is also where I am making my very concerted plug to all of you to go and talk to your librarians. I will not track you on the internet if you come and ask me, and I can find it for you. So that's my big advertising plug. I'm the most private search engine you can use. All right.
Can we?
Oh, sure, yes, absolutely. So parking is the thorn in the side of coming to visit Ebling because it is on campus. So you can park in the hospital parking ramp, and typically what I say to people is if you're in the hospital to go to another appointment, try and pay a visit to Ebling when you're there for something else, so that you can go and get your parking validated and come over to Ebling. Ebling is attached. You can get to the hospital. You can get to Ebling from the hospital. Now, the way to do that is you go to the cafeteria and you follow the signs that point towards the medical school, and they will lead you to us. That's typically the easiest way. Otherwise, you're pretty much stuck using street parking, which, it's in Shorewood Hills, or paying for the hospital ramp and coming around on the outside. Did I answer your question? So that is actually the hardest thing about accessing us, I'm afraid, is parking.
Can I ask you to maybe just, let's say I wanted to look up what causes Parkinson's.
Sure.
Can you just kind of give them an example of what they might do?
All right, so let's say I like to use Google as an example, because it's very easy to use. So let's say you just straight up typed it in. What causes Parkinson's disease? Now, here's Mayo right at the top. And just to show you, you can see it will give an overview. Usually it skips straight towards symptoms, though, because the truth is we don't know exactly what causes Parkinson's disease. And so you'll notice when we don't know the answer to a question, this top part is very small, and we go straight into symptoms. Now, if I'm evaluating this, before I even get into reading it, I want to know, okay, what is the Mayo Clinic? The Mayo Clinic is a for-profit healthcare organization. So it has two agendas. One is to take care of patients, and the other is to make money. These are both okay agendas. But are they trying to make any money from me with this information? It doesn't look like it. They might get my money this way, but not by giving me this information. Now, if we scroll down, there is an author here by Mayo Clinic staff. It doesn't say specifically, but you can probably find out who the development team is by clicking on it. So now we have who wrote it. What we don't have is a when. We don't have a date. It looks as though it's been updated fairly recently, but we don't have a specific date. So it meets a couple of our criteria, but not all of them. Do we have an answer that we want? That's the most important question, right? Do we have an answer? Not really. Because here it says, it defines what Parkinson's disease is, but it doesn't say what causes it. It says Parkinson's disease can't be cured. So let's see if some of the other search results yield anything. WebMD, well, we don't like that. Michael J. Fox Foundation, I don't know about that one. Healthline. Healthline was on our list of favorite librarian resources. 6 possible causes of Parkinson's disease. So let's see. Healthline, so that we can kind of go farther down. So we'll show you. It has, number 1, genetics. Some studies. And you'll notice it doesn't just say some studies. It has a link. The link shows you the studies. And, so this is why I love Healthline. Look, I'm just hovering over it, and it has a check mark that says trusted source. It doesn't just tell you it's a trusted source, it tells you why. It's because it comes from a journal called Nature, which is highly respected, peer-reviewed, and expert-written, and it provides you with a link to actually go to the source. So when it says some studies show, it's going to show you the studies if you want to look at them, and then move on. Makes sense what I mean by accurate. Healthline is a little bit more difficult to see who wrote it. They don't list the authors at the bottom, but I'm just going to tell you that Healthline has an editorial team that is almost entirely physicians, and to see who and when, who wrote the article and when, is fairly easy if you go a little bit farther down. But you'll notice that it does have ads as well, so it does get money from advertising revenue. But does it have an answer? Yes. it does. It has considerably more of a specific answer than the Mayo Clinics, and it presents it with sources. So it may not meet all of our criteria, but it does do a few things pretty well. Are we satisfied? Maybe. I might be satisfied with this. Or we could try instead doing it on one of mine. Medline Plus. I showed you this one. With Medline, it's very short. And you notice we didn't put in causes, but right at the top it says it happens when nerve cells of the brain don't produce enough of a brain chemical called dopamine. Sometimes it is genetic, but most cases do not seem to run in families. Exposure to chemicals in the environment may play a role. Boom. There's the answer. Right at the top, black and white, no ads. You don't have to scroll through anything. This is why we like Medline so much. Make sense? If you wanted to find out, so this is the Parkinson's Disease overview. I don't seem to be able to get through anything without pop-ups. All the way at the bottom. There's the disclaimers, there's the copyright. Handouts. Where did I have the author information? There. The author is the NIH. I'm going to go to symptoms. Like, let's say we go to diagnosis. Then it will take you out to one of the resources that they like. Medline Plus links to health information from the NIH and anything that follows its own quality guidelines. It tells you right here where the information comes from, and it gives you access to the encyclopedia to define terms, like swallowing problems, etc. Is it becoming clear why we like Medline so much? All right. That answer? Yeah, all right. Other questions at all? Like I say, there's not a lot to it, but it's just a question of doing it, and it takes quite a lot of patience, and we are here to help you. Now, there are little cards for many of the websites that I mentioned there on the back, along with a little poster from eBling. And I have a card that I brought with me there on the back with eBling Library's contact information, which should also be on your handout.